Good afternoon, students. So we are now in week 7 of this class. Only one more week left of this class. And so this week we're going to have week 7 forum, practice forum 4, which is going to be a last practice forum, week 7 quiz, then the end of class evaluation. And so just like with all your other quizzes, just look at my week 7 weekly video for the week 7 quiz, and for the week 7 forum, all you have to do is, we're going to be talking about dangers of a single story. And so here you have Adichie, and she's an African writer, and she comes from Nigeria. And so she offers a unique perspective on her view of a single story. So basically, in this life, we meet many, many people, and everybody has multiple stories to their life. And in a single story, we learn that it's always good to have an open mind. It's always good to learn from multiple perspectives. So for the week 7 forum, you're going to listen to the video on the dangers of a single story by Adichie, and then she's going to talk about how when she was little and she had only one vision or one perspective of what it's like to be poor, because Adichie grew up in a middle-class family in Nigeria, and both her parents were educators. So she was lucky that she had access to college education and to school materials. In her house lived a servant who was poor, but he was a good servant. So she thought that poor people were all just servants or only did one thing. And it wasn't until she went to visit the poor person's house, and then she saw a bigger picture of what it is to be poor in Nigeria, rather than just having that single story and just having one single perspective of what that poor person's life was like. She also gave another example where when she was growing up, and she would read children's books, and all of the children's books had featured people with blonde hair and blue eyes. And so she had this one perspective of what Europe or the world was like outside of Nigeria. And so then it wasn't until she came to the United States and studied in the United States that she saw more people and got to know Americans better. So basically, we all have a certain perspective of other cultures, of other people, and we need to expand our horizons and just learn more about other people, other cultures, so that we develop multiple perspectives about everyone, so that we get the full picture of who somebody is. So rather than judge someone just by stereotypes or appearance, we get to know who the people are, and you judge the person by their character and by their heart, rather than what you see in the media or what you see on television, that sort of thing. And so, for instance, Adichie gives another example where she's an African from Nigeria. So she goes to college, in America. Her roommate has this impression that Africa is a very primitive place where everybody is hungry and where everything is primitive. It's all jungle. And so the roommate would ask ignorant questions, saying, is Africa a primitive place filled with jungles and, Tarzan or something like that? And then at first, Adichie, being African, was puzzled because, when she pictures Nigeria, she pictures the way I picture New York City, a bustling city with lots of people, very metropolitan. And would you associate New York City? Well, I guess you could say it's a jungle, but metaphorically, a tropical jungle, that sort of thing. And so, then Adichie realized, that's all this roommate knows about Africa. All she knows about Africa, the roommate, is what she sees on Tarzan. So obviously she has the danger of one story, of one perspective of a certain group of people. And so Adichie filled in the blanks and said, no, actually Africa is just like New York City. And that's when that roommate had her horizons expanded by going to college and meeting other people, meeting Africans, meeting. So basically, the danger of one story is the danger of believing only one point of view, the danger of believing only one perspective. And so in this world, or in college, you get to meet people of all different walks and backgrounds in order to expand your horizon to avoid the danger of a single story. But she puts it much more elegantly in her TED Talk than I just did. Okay, so that's what we're going to discuss in the Week 7 forum, are different ways in which you can avoid the dangers of the single story. In other words, how you can avoid the dangers of being narrow-minded and only thinking in one way. So how can you expand your horizons to get to know other people better and get to know more cultures? So that's sort of what Week 7 forum is going to be about. And then the practice forum 4, we're going to discuss about how to revise your paper. And so we're right now, just like we were in week, I think it was week 5, now we're in week 7, and we are in the revision mode of your second essay. Okay, so by now you should have finished your outline, and you've already transformed your outline into a rough draft. So remember that there are 3 stages to the writing process. You have pre-writing, writing, and rewriting. And for your essay 2, pre-writing was week 4, and then where you came up with an essay topic. Writing was week 6, where you wrote the rough draft of your persuasive essay. Now we're in week 7, and you're just simply revising your rough draft based on the feedback that I gave you. And then next week, week 8, will be the last, the final draft, in which you hand in the final draft of your persuasive essay. And so we are going to go over how do we revise our paper during revision week. So I went over it a little bit last time. And so there are many different ways in which you can do revision, and many different ways in which you can do proofreading, so that the rewriting stage of the writing process has 2 stages, which I mentioned before. It's got revision, and then it's got proofreading. In the revision stage, you check for the overall essay structure. You look at your essay as a whole, holistically, and ask yourself, do I have 5-paragraph essay structure? Is my thesis the last sentence of the first paragraph? Do I have 1 introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and 1 conclusion? Are all my paragraphs 5 to 7 sentences? Are they all even? Do my topic sentences relate back to my thesis statement? Do I have a thesis statement that's effective? In other words, do I have a topic, opinion, reasons? And so basically you check off of that checklist, revision checklist, to make sure that your essay structure is solid. Okay? So once you determine that your essay structure is solid, then we do proofreading and editing. So in the proofreading and editing stage, that's when you check for grammar and punctuation. And so you want to check for grammar and punctuation, as well as your APA formatting. So once you finish doing your revision, now you're going to do proofreading and editing. And so you're going to check to make sure all your grammar is correct, all your punctuation is correct. You're going to check to make sure you double-spaced your paper, and that you indented the first line of every paragraph, that you have 1 APA in-text citation per paragraph. You have, in your in-text citation, if it's a direct quote, you have quotation marks, beginning quotation mark, and an ending quotation mark. And you have author, date, page number for your direct quote, and then just author and date for your paraphrase quote. Then you want to make sure that you have your references in alphabetical order listed at the end of your paper, in which your reference citation consists of the author name, the date, the article name, publication name, date you retrieved the website, and the website address. So you always want to make sure that you do the revision first before you do the proofreading. So always do revision before you do the proofreading. Then you're going to have this revision sheet that's going to have many different ways in which you can do to revise your paper, many different ways in which you can edit and proofread your paper. And so, for instance, in the revision stage, you can do the scissors method. You can cut up your paper and then stack your paragraphs next to each other and see if each of the paragraphs are even. You can even color code your sentences to make sure that you have a variety of sentences, that you have simple sentences, complex sentences, and compound sentences, so that you don't say the same thing twice. You want to make sure you have transition words. So instead of saying and all the time, you use transition words of addition. Instead of saying but all the time, you use transition words of opposition. And instead of saying so all the time, you use transition words of sequential. And so if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go look at my transition word video, and also you can download for yourself transition words. Okay, you can download for yourself different kinds of transition words. Then you get a list of different ways to say and, transition words of addition, different ways of saying but, transition words of opposition, different ways of saying then and therefore, so different transition words of sequence. And so all of these you're going to check last. And then you could do glossing, or in other words, you read your paper backwards. Now, I've never personally read my paper backwards to check my paper to see if it's correct. But other students have done so, and they've told me it's a great way to revise your paper. And then you can also use specific focus. This is for proofreading. So specific focus is that you look at one grammar mistake at a time. So let's say I'm going to check for a comma usage. So I'll check my entire paper for just comma usage. Then I check to make sure I have all complete sentences. Then I read over the paper again. So if you use specific focus, you would have to read your paper many different times. You can also have somebody else look at your paper, someone that you know is good in English, to look over your paper for you in order to check for your essay structure, to check for your grammar, and that sort of thing. And one last piece of advice that I give students: take a break. When you revise your paper, we become too close. You know, whenever a person writes a paper, we become too close to our own paper, and so therefore we can't see our own mistakes. That's because of our ego. We think we're so great. Everybody does. So if you take a break, go take a walk, go play tennis, go watch television. But whatever you do, you leave the paper for a while. And then you come back refreshed. Then you can correct your paper and you can see more of your mistakes. So I do that all the time. I like to take breaks. I like to take a walk in nature, because for me, the sun, is so revitalizing. So that's the week 4 practice forum 4, where we're going to discuss revision, and then your end of class survey. So you need to do your end of class survey or your end of class evaluation, so that I get to see how I can improve my teaching, or how this class can be improved. And if you really love this class, say so. So that I can get a good grade. No, I'm just kidding. So you don't forget to fill out your end of class evaluation, which you're not going to get that from me. You'll get that from the school. Okay, so they'll send that to you, and they'll give you a link where you can get your end of class evaluation. And you can always ask your student success coach if you don't get your end of class survey by by week 7, the end of week 7, you can always ask your student success coach to resend the link. And then next week, so this will be my last. So in today's lesson, this will be my last example of a persuasive essay. Okay, so I will be doing college should be tuition free, I think. So I need to find, there it is. Okay, so this will be my last share screen lesson for this entire class. And then the next lesson will be your last lesson from me. Yeah, so that you'll be ready to graduate from English 101 and move on to either English 105, English 115, or you go to another topic or another department altogether. So let's do one last share screen together. And so here I go to my beloved whiteboard. And so here we go. And so here, today's example, okay, is going to be about, I'm going to give one last persuasive essay example, okay? So in this example, all right, the student wrote you're going to have your introduction. Let's see. Okay, here you have your introduction. And then by now, hook, 5 background sentences and thesis, then paragraph 2, paragraph 3, paragraph 4, and then paragraph 5, and that's it. And that would be the conclusion. So this is going to be your persuasive essay. So here, ever been in debt? Do people like to be buried in student debt for years at a time? Obviously not, but this is a hypothetical question. Hook. So once again, instead of saying, do you like to be buried in debt? Or have you ever been in debt? So I replace you and your with people. Okay, so we avoid you and your. We avoid first and second person case in our academic essay. Because when we are writing an academic research paper, as I said ever since week 3, we always have to use a formal tone of English because we have to always be aware of our audience. And so when we write an academic research paper, our audience is our teacher. And therefore we have to maintain a formal tone of English, which means we use third person case. And so here I would write that so many students become indebted or have a huge, many students borrow money to go to college, to pay for the expensive college tuition. For many borrowers, it takes decades to pay back their student loan. And because of this heavy debt, many students cannot afford to buy a house or start a family. And college tuition is getting more and more expensive, causing students to take out larger and larger loans. And now with inflation, many students cannot afford to go to college and spend years paying off a student loan. So that's the situation. So we state the situation about how student debt is crushing us, the student population, keeping students from buying a house or starting a family. And so what's the solution? So here I state the situation, I state the problem, I create the context for the thesis statement in my 5 background sentences. Now, in the last sentence of the first paragraph, I state my, college tuition, or college should be tuition free. This is somebody's, this is someone's essay, because having a tuition-free college experience results in a more educated workforce, allows low-income students to afford college, and encourages students to stay in college. In other words, you lower student attrition. So that becomes your thesis statement. Okay, so I don't need the 5 background. There you go. And so, as we did before, the reasons of your thesis statement become your body paragraphs. So if college is tuition free, this will result in a more educated workforce. Free college would allow low-income students to go to college, and college has 2 L's, college. And then tuition-free college would allow more students to stay in college, that sort of thing, okay? I could also do more, but that's basically, so here you have, if college is tuition free, it would result in a more educated workforce, so that matches your thesis statement. The topic sentence matches the thesis statement. Free college would allow low-income students to go to college. That also matches the thesis statement. And tuition-free college will allow more students to stay in college. So then, once again, you have, it matches your thesis statements. You always have to make sure that your topic sentences match your thesis statement. Then you got to make sure that each one of these paragraphs has 5 to 7 sentences. So I'm just going to keep this really, really short, and it's not anything that I haven't gone over before. So if you have any questions, you can always email me, and you can always ask me questions about what you need to do. And so next week will be our very last, sadly for me, but happily for you, very last lesson. And during that lesson, in week 8, I'll just give a more personal lecture. And I don't think there's anything except for your week 8 quiz and your week 8 forum. That's basically all you need to do for week 8, I think. So I will go over that, and I will go over what you need to do and what you need to finish. So I hope that you find that writing an essay is now something very easy for you to do. I'll also go over next week what to expect if you take English 105 or if you take English 115 with me. Now, I don't know ahead of time what classes I'm going to be teaching, because it all depends on student enrollment. And so I don't know until like a couple of days before the class start what classes I'm going to be in. So I have no power over that. Sometimes I teach English 101, sometimes I teach English 105, sometimes I teach English 115, and so it's all very random depending on student enrollment. So I just teach whatever appears on my dashboard, whatever the boss gives. So I will have one more lecture with you guys here in English 101, and I'm hoping that you've learned a lot of writing in this class. And so if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Let's see. Okay, so if you have any questions at all, feel free to email me.